it's so bad in minor sports, and hockey's definitely at the heart of it in this country for sure. But if you go down south, football, basketball, baseball, I don't care what it
Hmm.
is. Like
Yeah.
when kids are playing, the referee abuse is unbelievable. Like it's got to kind of break your heart a little bit to see kind of the state of refereeing. There's reffing shortages for youth sports all over the place. It's here in Ontario. I'm sure it's the same out there. I mean, it's got to kind of break your heart a little bit to see that that's kind of the case where it's parents with young kids that are ruining opportunities for officials to potentially pursue a career like yours.
Yeah, and the turnover for young officials, you're going to have say there's 50 kids that sign up in minor hockey to be a level 1 ref, right? And they sign up. Some of them might not just like it and they quit. And the next year they just didn't like it, didn't get a lot of games, and so they're done. But then there's the kids that actually it's too tough on them. They can't catch a break, and it's not for everyone. But the amount of, just kind of like disrespect that some of the young kids get, right? It can really change their opinion of officiating, and they end up quitting. And now we're maybe struggling for officials in that center because it's hard to get them up. Even some of the old, minor hockey, some of the umpires and basketball refs and stuff like that. Some of the older ones that maybe parents might even be like, they got to get rid of that guy. That guy can't be reffing anymore. I'm like, well, that guy's also helping the young officials. He does ice sessions with the officials, once a month. That guy might be the one that's actually helping develop the officials. Yeah, guess what? They're not great, right? No one's great. Even the NHL, we watch the NHL. It's not like there's no game that's perfectly officiated in the National Hockey League because every play is just there's so many angles on a play and so many different options. And, maybe there's a penalty that might be a penalty at this time of the game and might not at the end of the game. Even though we want it to be consistent, at the end of the day, we also don't want it to be consistent. Late in the game, there might be that little tug in the back, behind the play that maybe in the beginning of the game might get called. So it just changes everyone's opinion on a play. Like, how do they not call that? Well, there's maybe more to it. So it's really difficult. It's a hard sport to officiate. I look at umpiring, like these minor umpires that are right behind the plate, and there's just a fence, and all the parents just sit right there, and you can hear them whisper. I bet. Like I've never umpired a baseball game, but that I think would be really hard to have parents sitting 10 feet behind you. At least in hockey, you can skate into the other corner and kind of get away from it. But it is tough. Minor sports, officiating in general, because especially in the young youth sports, it's not going to be at the level that you're expecting. Even if they're doing their best and they're calling a good game, it's not going to be perfect, right? It's officiating, especially hockey. Hockey's so fast and so many different angles and situations that it's not going to be overly consistent as much as we try to make it consistent.
Yeah, it's the hardest sport in the world to ref. I mean, baseball would be close simply because of the speed of pitches at that pro level. But in general, from, youth league all the way up to pros, I think hockey in general is easily the toughest. It's because of that speed, and you got guys flying around out there. And I love what you said there. Steve, it can't be perfect, but we as fans are spoiled by technology now where we're watching on our couches and getting 70 camera angles. And we tend to forget. And I've been as guilty of it as anybody. I thought every ref hated my Capitals every time a bad call was made that I thought was bad. But we forget pretty quickly that you guys have one angle and it's your sight line. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that that's played a factor in a number of different encounters you've had where you've made calls throughout your career.
For sure. And I always try to reiterate to people, I've done a lot of speeches for hockey teams as kind of come in as a referee side of it, just to let them know, hey, there's a different side of hockey. And in some of those conversations, one of the things that I do say to them is, look, at the NHL is the mecca. That's the top of the hockey world. That's where everyone wants to be. And when we watch a game and it's not perfect and they miss something, and those guys communicate all year long, they're always watching videos, they're working on little quizzes, they're always just trying to stay sharp on their rules. Western Hockey League, we did the same thing. The whole CHL does, where you're getting clips, probably weekly. You're going over things. When you're driving in a car, you're talking about situations, trying to be consistent through the Western Hockey League, which we have guys in Brandon and guys in Portland, pretty far apart, and we're trying to be consistent. So when we get to the minor levels with officiating in any sport, and oh well, last game that was called, and this game it's not called. There's a lot of the questions that they'll bring up. How come it's like this sometimes, and how come it's not? Well, you might have a 15-year-old kid that wants to move on up in officiating. He's going to try as hard as he can. He's skating. He's learning the rules. You might have a guy that's just out there to get some money on the weekend, fill some time. You might have an old guy that it's his 8th game of the day, or the weekend, and so you're going to have different varieties of it. So NHL, communicating all the time, trying to be consistent, very difficult to be consistent. You bring that down down to minor hockey, it's very difficult to have consistency through U13, U15, U17, 18, right? So it's a difficult job for everyone on the ice, and it's difficult for us as fans and parents to be able to watch it, and we get so attached to it, right? It's our sport and we love it. So when something's not going your way, it's easy to just go right to the refs. That's how, I'm a hockey fan. Don't get me wrong. I played men's league last night and I gave the guy a hard time for not calling a slash and said, I wasn't mad that it wasn't a power play. I'm just like, all I told him was, careful what you just started, because there's going to be more now. Like, it's been a calm game. You don't call one. And sure enough, the next 2 plays, couple huge hacks. And that's kind of the whole thing, right? It's hard to be right as officials and make everyone happy, because you're calling a penalty, someone's going to be upset, the other team's going to be happy. So no matter what, it's a lose-lose kind of job,